All right, I'll take a handful of the questions, and I'm going to look to my left for Ms. Bavard to take a few of those as well, because she's been working, she and Charlie Cardillo, who will be assuming her position when she leaves at the end of next month, and have been working with the individual building principals on fleshing out a lot of these instructional models. Your first question is about what's going to occur on the alternating days in the high school. And I do think that some of that will depend on what the exact curriculum is that is being taught. So I think it will likely be a combination of sometimes students will be observing a lesson, a teacher projecting the whiteboard, for example, and students at home will be observing that while students in the class are observing it. But the hope would be that we maximize the value of the in-person time. So I wouldn't want teachers to be so distracted by students that might be participating online that they lose the value of being in person with students. So calibrating that and getting that right, one thing we heard a lot from teachers was how hard it was to manage an all virtual classroom. I can only imagine how much harder it would be to have that virtual classroom and also a live classroom in front of you. And so what we don't want to do is create a situation where we make it bad for both. So that will take some time for us to get right. I imagine that there will be lots of independent work that goes on at home, and it will need to be structured so that it meaningfully builds on what goes on in the classroom. But if you look at a typical classroom period, we'll have some period of direct instruction or setting up of a task, but then there's a lot of independent work and coaching. And so that independent work can occur at home or in the classroom, and then the coaching ends up being something that's slightly easier to do in person, but maybe a follow-up exercise with teachers. The teachers will be busy all day, every day. So the additional investment that they make in the students who are in the remote group is going to be an additional task for them, even if that feedback is by email or at the end of the day or through Google Classroom. It will be one more task to accomplish. So I'm imagining that it is going to be a combination of a bunch of different learning modalities and no one modality altogether. Ninth grade orientation, I don't know if Ms. Bavard has talked with, I know that the high school is thinking about this, but I don't know granular. When I turn it over to you, I'll let you go into that in some detail. I'll talk about fully remote, and then I'll let Ms. Bavard talk about the elementary school remote model. We have just started surveying staff, and so once I have a better sense of how many staff require an accommodation, and we will start surveying parents very shortly. We'll get a sense of what the numbers are and what the ages are, quite frankly, not of the teachers, of the students, and then we'll see how much alignment we have between those two bodies. Obviously, what would be easiest logistically is if there is some nice matchup between the two. If that doesn't occur in quite that way, we'll have to think differently about how we address that. But the first step for us is to see what we're dealing with. So we're going to do those surveys and see where we are. So elementary school co-pilot model. And before we get to that, passing time at the high school, cleaning between. So one of the things in Dr. Rupo's presentation that I wanted to underscore at the time, neglected too, is that the products that we're using have a multi-day lifespan. So they are disinfectants, but they don't stop working once they dry up. In fact, they dry on surfaces, and the intention is that the product works in such a way that once they dry on surfaces, they continue to be antimicrobial for a number of days. So that protection occurs all throughout the day. We are still going to try and do quick cleaning in classrooms between period changes, but the most protective measure is this base coat of antimicrobial product that is laid down on all these surfaces and is effective for multiple days at a time. Passing time right now is going to be very close to what it was before. We're hoping that with half as many students in the building and the imposition of one-way direction in corridors, that makes the passing time a lot better. Obviously, this is something that we will have to see in action and evaluate in real time. If we need to add a minute to passing time in order to make it just a little less density in the hallways, or we need to shift and do some students leave a little ahead of others. We'll work through that algorithm. But right now, we're thinking that with half the students in the high school, that we're going to be in a little bit better shape with that. So let's go on.
Okay, so ninth grade orientation will take place this year. It will be virtual, not in person, and that's really to give the high school enough time to get construction finished. There's so much going on in the high school. They'll be sending out a link at the end of August on that same time frame, and we're getting pretty good at making videos that are engaging and informative for students, so we look forward to that. Elementary co-pilots. So lots of things are being discussed. The staffing, we're very confident in our staffing that we'll have a teacher, that will have a class roster that's going to have to be split between two classrooms. There'll be a certified teacher in both of those spaces. We have many ways where students can experience both teachers. So lots of things are being discussed. The teachers can switch and do lessons in each of the spaces. We can stream from one classroom to the other. So one teacher can teach, the other teacher can be with the students in the other room, observing the lesson, supporting the lesson. So we're leveraging technology, we're leveraging creativity, and we're letting teachers really understand and work with the new platforms that we have for the virtual environment and maximize that in the space for this condition. So the collaboration will be strong between the teacher and the co-pilot, and they'll be co-planning and co-presenting and working with students. And the exciting thing is that all of our students will have that smaller environment to work in. Even with the situation being a little different, we're really excited about the opportunity for the small groups in the elementary school. Was there another question I didn't address, Dr. Rogers?
I think we got all of them.
Okay.
And thank you for the kind words and words of appreciation, and thank you, Ms. Birch, as well, for the kind words of appreciation.
Yeah, I just wanted to add too, so we are going to be posting a plain language summary of this plan online. So if you missed anything or didn't quite hear tonight, that's going to be going out very soon. We're just putting finishing touches on it, which basically takes this presentation and unpacks it very thoroughly in a document. And it will be posted so you can read it at your leisure, and we'll give you all the information.
Dr. Rogers, I understand that we're going to be iterating this plan over time. Last year, when we arrived at specific instructional plans, we advised parents via email so that they would understand what their child's day was going to look like. So, are you planning to continue that practice once we know what the high school day is going to look like, the middle school day, elementary school day? Are we going to be able to get that information out to parents before day one of the school so that they have a sense of what their child's day is going to look like?
Yeah, the short answer to that is yes. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of work this summer, and there's more to come, but we will give parents a solid understanding of what to expect when the school happens. Even though we were going to be, again, this is all the governor says do it. We're building plans in case the governor says work up. And we know how long it's going to take to figure out doing this, which is why we have to be working at it constantly. If the governor says that we're in person, then all of our energy in August will be dedicated towards that. If the governor says we're virtual, then all of our energy in August will be dedicated towards the virtual environment. Wherever we arrive at the end of August, with a little bit of time left to go, we'll let parents know what to expect when they go back to what we're going to call the new normal. And we hope that this crisis doesn't last more than a year, but we know that there's the potential it could. And so we're just going to look at this as the new normal. We have to educate kids. They only get to be in 4th grade once, so we have to make that year count for them. So we'll let parents have a sense of what that is. And again, as we iterate these plans over time, we will try to continue to keep parents up to date on the changes that we're making and the reasons why.
Thank you. That closes audience to the public. And before we get started with board questions and comments, I just want to thank all of the teachers who've been working so hard over the summer. And obviously, last year was an incredible phenomenon, and the effort was tremendous, and we're asking the same again this this year, as all school districts are, of course, but working this summer to make sure that our students have programs that are going to translate either in the virtual setting and also in class is worthy work, but very difficult work. And so we just want you to know how much we appreciate you. And questions from the board? Rob?
Dr. Rogers, we're talking about the mask issue. Given how important it is to wear the mask, and the fact that you know that masks actually do spread transmission of the virus, what are we going to do about non-compliance? What do we do about students who refuse to wear a mask or constantly take their mask off? Is there going to be any enforcement? How are we going to monitor that? And in addition, with respect to the 15-minute breaks, are those borrowing from the educated online? Are the students, is that going to be synchronous or asynchronous? In other words, will students all be taking their masks off at once for a 15-minute period, or is that going to be staggered? And if they take their masks off for 15 minutes, how do we reconcile that with the fact that we say we want to protect all the students and that their safety of the students and the safety of our teachers is the most important thing?
So the state's guidance says that students may remove their mask during instruction, provided that there is social distance. So we're trying to do one better than the state guidance and put the plastic barriers between students and one another and students and teachers as well. So we're trying to build on what the state has as their minimum safety standard. What I'm imagining is that a mask break might look like a staggered mask break where maybe half the class removes their mask at a time, not all of the class at a time. But I think board members, you probably have an opportunity to peer into some of the classes here in Southport Elementary that have been now set up with the chairs at a social distance, and you can see that there is actually a lot of space between the chairs in the classroom. And so I think if we do both of those things, I don't think that if every other student has their mask off, now you've doubled the distance between the two students that have their mask off. And we're now so much more protected than the minimum that's required by the state. And we presume, of course, that the state's minimum is thoughtfully put together. And so that makes us feel good that we're exceeding the state's minimum. What will we do with refusal, enforcement, non-compliance? We're in conversations with our attorneys right now to see what is permissible. It's clear that there are going to be some students for whom their disability creates an inability to wear a mask, and that will be handled in a different way as non-compliance that is simply refusal. So I don't have the exact answer to that question yet because we're still going through what the relevant laws are, but that's something that will have to be resolved before we're done with this process.
Susan Bethel?
Hi, so I know a lot of parents are unsure what they want to do for the fall, if they want to opt their children out or if they want to send them to school. Is there a specific date that they need to let the school district know what their intention is? And once a family has decided to opt out of either the school or the bus, are they able to opt back in at a later date if they decide they're not comfortable with it?
Yeah, both good questions. So we're going to be sending out that parent survey very shortly to ask parents their intentions for the fall, and that will give us the ability to do a better job of planning for the fall. Obviously, it will be very difficult to accommodate people coming in and going out and class sizes changing. So we're going to try to come up with a couple of milestone points through the year. Natural milestone points at the elementary school level are the trimesters because we're on a trimester grading system. At the secondary schools, quarters because we're on a quarterly grading system. And so we would want to not have to rethink about our schools on a weekly or a daily basis. We would want to be able to do some better planning. It'll be a better experience for the children, whether they go out or whether they come back, if we can do some planning for them in advance. Same thing with buses. We're going to reroute all the buses so that we can be as efficient as possible, knowing that the buses will have reduced capacity. So it's not like there will be a lot of excess capacity on a bus. If somebody decides to change their mind and want to take the bus, we will have already tried to max that bus out because they're going to be so tight to begin with. So again, we'll try to find natural milestones during the year where if we have to change things, if the route has changed, because we have to accommodate more students, it may change the pickup time for every child on that route, which would be very disruptive to a lot of families. So we're trying to get the balance of serving students, but also not doing things that are so disruptive that they impact lots and lots and lots of other families.
Krista Blackout?
Can you hear me? Okay. Dr. Rogers, a couple of things here. The CDC has come out with people who tested positive, and if they tested positive within, and they have symptoms after 3 months. So after the onset of those symptoms, and they should be retested. Obviously, there has to be some staff. Syosset is not immune to COVID-19, as well as some students. And I don't have that information. But my concern here is that recent developments have been stating that people who have had COVID-19, it actually never may leave the body. They can get reinfected, and they can also become infectious to other people. This presents, obviously, a concern. It also puts at risk students and staff that may have certain medical conditions. For example, they have asthma. I'm not sure if allergies play a part with this. And sometimes the certain types of allergies that people have can affect their breathing, can affect the respiratory system. So I don't know if we have any type of contact tracing information from the state or county, but that in itself is a concern. And if we do identify these people, we don't, we need to know, I guess, where they are, because people who are at more risk need to be protected somehow, and not in a class, especially people like me, perhaps they're at a much higher risk. Additionally, what plays into role with this is that also recently they found evidence in a classroom where the vent is where the teacher is. So I'm not sure, can we ask the architects? I don't think we're going to have full air conditioning in time for ventilation, but it is also recommended to increase the oxygen or the outside air into the classrooms. I don't know what percent we're looking to do that. And I know you talked about the filters, and that's important, but they also talk about fresh air. That's why some of the schools and places, and for example, the fire department, they're beginning to put back some exercising, but it's done outdoors. So they're not doing it indoors. So I don't know if we're doing any outdoor learning either. So maybe we want to take a look at if the air conditioning is not ready for the increased oxygen, maybe it's possible to bring some type of fans to increase the ventilation. If that proves to be, effective for the students in the classroom. Thank you.
Okay, so this came up on the call with Northwell this afternoon, and one of the physicians said that the general topic of air filtration came up, and while there's no evidence yet that air filtration necessarily stops the transmission of disease, there's no reason why we shouldn't try to upgrade all the filtration that we can. It just makes sense for us to max out the maximum capacity of any of our equipment in the district. We have been in the process of installing a lot of air conditioning. Those projects are going underway this summer. Those are split units, so they don't have a fresh air intake by design. They have a condenser coil that is usually on the roof, and then the coolant is piped into the classroom, and the classroom air is passed over a coil in the unit that's in the classroom, and that cools the air in the classroom. So I'm imagining that in many classrooms, the fresh air will come from opening windows, will control the temperature in the classroom. It will not be as efficient, obviously, to have an open window on a hot day and then run the air conditioner in the classroom. But this is a way you can have cooling and fresh air simultaneously if we're using these split units. On the chart that you saw, we talked about something called unit ventilators. So unit ventilators do have the ability to bring in fresh air as part of a mix into the room. And so we'll be looking to optimize the amount of fresh air that's being brought in through those unit ventilators. Again, the newer unit ventilators tolerate a much higher level of MERV filter. The older unit ventilators, as you would expect, don't tolerate the denser filters as well. Where we have rooftop units, and this is a perfect example, there's a big unit on the roof, and these are all ducted air conditioning vents that are in the ceiling. Those units, you can put very good filters in those units, and then you control the air that's in the whole room. In terms of your question about whether symptoms can linger in persons, the CDC protocol requires you to be asymptomatic. I keep losing the feed from this microphone. The CDC protocol requires you to be asymptomatic, so fever reduction without the use of fever-reducing medication. So if you're still experiencing fever after more than 10 days, then you still wouldn't clear the CDC protocol that's been shared with school districts for return to school or return to work. Contact tracing and persons who are positive. So the school district is going to be asked to supplement contact tracing that is conducted by the county health department, but the school district itself is not a contact tracing organization, and we don't have the security clearance to have access to health information about people. It's protected by federal law, and as a result, if the county health department, they will only release information to us that is absolutely essential for their own contact tracing protocols, but they won't give us any direct information about people. So I hope that answers the question. We will be in a support assistance capacity, but we will not be able to know necessarily if a child had COVID over the summer and came back to school in the fall. They will tell us if in their judgment, they will know everyone who has tested positive in Nassau County. They will have their own contact trace, and if they conclude that that person may pose a risk to the learning community, then they would inform us. But it's entirely possible that there will be cases that they don't inform us about because they judge them not to be a risk.
Hi, everyone. So I want to just give some comments and questions.
Hold on 1 second, Tom. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Sorry, to Dr.
Chris Katambo, and then you'll have another chance. Thank you. It's okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to give just a quick comment. So when I got here today, just my own little experience, was that the school nurse was here, the security experience outside, they took your temperature, there was social distancing. I happened to cut my finger on the way in, and I was bleeding, so quickly the nurse whisked me into the nurse's office, washed me up, put a Band-Aid on, social distancing. We went into the room, the chairs and the tables were all spread apart. On the way here to the gymnasium, the school was spotless. Like my mother used to say, you can eat off the floor. I want to thank the custodians. The custodians took me into the room to show us how the desks and teachers' desks were social distance. And they took a lot of pride in showing me that. So obviously, it goes without saying that everybody at SAPSA has a lot of passion and cares about, their job here. So I want to thank the custodial staff, the audiovisual staff, because honestly, this was the last minute decision. It was not easy to get this all set up, stream. This is a lot of work on top of all the other work that everybody has to do, which I just want to let you know that myself, the entire board, I want to thank everybody. My questions. Last year we had spoken, Dr. Rogers, about the busing with the app that Huntington Coach was working on that would give the parents a heads up on the bus will be there approximately at this time. I don't know if that's complete, and I don't know if at this point the app or some kind of system in transportation can be updated to say this student is going to come to school within a reasonable amount of time to make the bus route more efficient, as what we were talking about before. So if someone decides to go to school or is not going to go to school because they're saying, I don't feel good, they're going to err on staying home, can we work on some sort of app, something electronically where transportation has a heads up of who's going to school, who's not going to school? That's one. But you can answer all people.
Sure. So thank you for the thank you. And we did talk with, we've been working with Huntington Coach using some of the downtime to work on that app. But the way that app works is it's GPS based, and it will inform you when the GPS notices that the bus is getting close to your particular stop. But it's not a two-way communication kind of an app where you would say, don't bother stopping, I'm not going to be there at the bus stop. We do try to route the buses in a way that the bus stops have more than one student at it. So for us to not make a stop, we would have to have multiple students not be at the bus stop. So I don't know if we can pick up any efficiency that way. I think what's more helpful is to know if there are parents who are planning to drive their student to school nearly every day, and we know that in advance, and parents are clear with us if that's what's really going to happen. We can plan around that. Now busing is a scarcity. So in the past, busing was sort of a given, but because it's a scarcity, if someone says, I might use the bus once every 2 weeks, it could be taking a seat away from somebody who really needs it every day.
And so my questions also involve, so the same thing as you're talking about with like the pre-order system, let's say for lunch. I know when PTA used to do the school lunch, they were able to basically set up a program. People would let them know, I want a bagel with cream cheese, I want a bagel with butter. They would get the whole school's lunch, and they would put the order in, and the order would come. So maybe more aspirational than, and obviously everything else is a work in progress. But the same thing with, if we're looking to do like pre-packaged, pre-ordered lunches, again, to keep the handling less and safer and healthier, same thing for the bus company. My other question was, this related to what Chris DeFilippo was saying was, if there is a case in the school, can we alert parents, teachers, the students as soon as possible, even if everybody goes home, or even if it's error on caution? Because to me it seems like it's bureaucratical that the health department's going to let us know. Meanwhile, it can spread all day in class. So, is there any way that as soon as we know anything, even if we're to let everybody know, because people are exposed, they're walking around the school?
Yeah. So one of the things that the health commissioner said was he's recommending that we do, there's a free contact tracing course online, And the reason why he's recommending it is not because he wants to turn us into an army of contact tracers, but because it helps us understand how the disease is transmitted. So if there is a positive case in the school, just because someone else was in the room with that positive case, they're not sick. They were exposed to someone who is sick, but they're not sick themselves. So if they are still in the school, they're not infecting other people because they're not themselves contagious because they have not yet come down with it. Now they may come down with it 4 days hence. That's sort of typical sometime in the next 14 days. And at that point, they would become contagious. In fact, they become contagious before they started showing symptoms. But they're not contagious immediately after being in the presence of someone. But that's not an argument for not moving quickly. It's an argument, it's just a reassurance that just because you were exposed to somebody doesn't mean that you are now exposing others as well, because you haven't had a chance to go through the incubation period and become sick yourself. So whatever we do that same day, we'll want to clean any place that the actual sick person has been, because they may have touched surfaces, they may have touched the phone, they may have touched the doorknob. We'll want to clean all of those things to make sure that there's no transmission from that infected person, but the other people who are infected are not necessarily at risk. But we would send that class home, we would monitor that class for 14 days. What we're likely to observe in school, we don't have any way of testing somebody and determining that they are positive. That's not a role that we'll play. What will either happen is we'll see somebody who exhibits a fever, or maybe they throw up in class, and these things happen pre-COVID, and this is part of childhood. And so we'll address it in a very conservative manner, assuming it works. And then once we come up with, physician comes up with an explanation for the symptom that it's not COVID related, then we'll go back to prior status. But that's the algorithm that health department wants to work through with us, is we tell them exactly all the details, and then they will come back and say, okay, here's what your next step is.
But we can communicate it.
We cannot communicate, I can't say Tom Rotolo.
Can I say, can Tom Rotolo say, and volunteer it out?
Tom Rotolo, the school board member, may not say it. No one from the school district, no one who's in a position of authority or responsibility with the school district can disclose the health information of any staff member or any student who's in their presence. What we can do is we can alert people that they may have been exposed. So this is what we were doing back in March. We were doing, without any specificity, saying that there is a possibility that and for the people who, and again, there's an algorithm for what constitutes a close contact, and then less than that, approximate contact. And for people who are in those two groups, we sent individualized letters explaining that you were at a greater level of exposure, and here's what you need to be doing next. You need to self-quarantine 14 days, 10 days, and we would direct them exactly what to do. And we always suggest that people consult with your family physician once you get on that.
My point is quicker, better.
Yeah, and I think with all of those, we went as quickly as we could as soon as we got clearance from the health department.
Andy?
I have two quick questions. For parents that decide not to send children to school, the current attendance guidelines we follow, and for students receiving services and or accommodations, are there any alternative plans in place other than the ones we've already discussed?
So if a student has an IEP and they're receiving services or they have some kinds of accommodations, that plan goes with them, whether they're in the virtual environment or whether they're in the in-person environment. So just as we tried our best this spring to make sure that we followed the IEPs for students, even though we were all virtual, the same thing would happen this fall. We would do our very best to make sure that we followed the IEP as much as we could in the virtual environment. So they don't lose those services or those accommodations.
Sarah?
Thank you, Dr. Rogers and his administration for such a comprehensive presentation, and also the audio video crew for working on the audio. A few questions regarding the curriculum. Number one, have you heard from the state regarding the state testing period? And number two, how is grading going to be done starting in September? And for middle school, we are switching from 9 period to 8 period. With some of the electives being postponed to the following school year. Is there a way that we could include some of these electives so that they can do a quarter of this, quarter of the kids can still get a taste of that? Because I feel that that's what makes like us.
Thanks. I'll let Ms. Bavard handle the electives question. I'll talk about state testing. So last Thursday, I believe, I was on a Zoom call with the Commissioner of Education. She did address the state testing question. She said that the 3 through 8, the grades 3 through 8 English and math tests are federal requirement. The federal government waived that requirement this past spring, which is why the state also waived the requirement to take the tests. The federal government hasn't done that yet, but it was her impression that if the federal government gave us that flexibility, that New York State would apply to take advantage of that flexibility. The second series of assessments are Regents assessments, and those are state assessments. They're not a federal requirement, although there is a federal requirement that students have to take at least 5 exit exams. So there is a little bit of overlap there. No decision's been made by the Regents about whether they will postpone the Regents exams or waive the Regents exams as they did this year. So that remains to be seen, but I don't think that they'll be able to delay that decision indefinitely because the first round of Regents exams is actually in January, not in June. And so they'll have to make some decision about the January exams, I think, in the next month or two. So that there are some school districts that actually plan their courses around taking the exam in January. And so they would need to know early in the fall what their exam strategy was that they were preparing for. In terms of grading, our priority this spring with grading was to try and recognize that this was a dramatic situation for students, that students may be experiencing loss in their own family, that students may be sick themselves, and that the learning was not, it was something that we worked on hard, but it was also very new. We wanted to make sure we had a grading policy that didn't let kids feel penalized by the fact that they were in an unusual circumstance. But as I said earlier, we're assuming that this is going to be the new normal until we see some breakthroughs in the health field. And because of that, we're going to go back to grading that holds students accountable for their work, grading that pushes students to do their very best work. And same thing with attendance policies and requirements for students to be present. If they are in a virtual environment, we'll expect that they have their cameras on so that teachers know that they're engaging them and that they have the ability to see the students that they're working so hard to teach, because that's the reward that teachers get more than anything else. So it will be a little different. Ms. Bavard, can you hear me?
So in order to get all the students in school and have appropriate staff to teach them, we have to go to the 8-period day. So the electives that will be suspended this year, we can't bring them back because we don't have staff to teach them. We have looked carefully at what are the state requirements, and we offer well above in SIASA. That's what makes us so special, right? So, you know, we all trust that this will be a 1 year, or maybe less, maybe more, but you know, when we get back to our program, the students will have all the state requirements because we go so far above that. For this year, in order to have students every day with their teachers, we have to go to that 8-period day.
Yes, Dr. Rogers. I think one of my questions was, it has to, I'll rephrase it, it has to do with students who are vulnerable, those who may have, and I'm going to just give examples because I don't have all the medical needs, issues, requirements that the students have asthma or allergies? How do we ensure that they're protected in the classroom? That, so they're not, exposed any more than they need to be. And I know that would be possibly a monumental job, but however, a parent bringing a student in with medical need needs to be assured that their child is safe during the day, that they're not going to be exposed to the virus and cause more complications.
Right, so two thoughts on that. The first is that those parents have the opportunity to talk with us about the kinds of accommodations they think might be necessary for their child, and it may be different based on the individual circumstances of the child. The second is the protective measures that we have in place are designed to interrupt disease transmission, and it's not dependent on who the person is. The 6 feet is designed to be the distance at which the disease stops being transmitted. The mask is designed to stop the spread of droplets, and the plastic is designed to keep any of those two from migrating further. So all of those together are the things that make everyone safe. So it is, trying to think of how to phrase this, we're trying to interrupt transmission of disease for everyone, not just for people who are at risk. And so these are the 3 things that were recommended and that the research shows interrupt disease transmission. And we're trying not just to use one of them, but to use at least 2 out of 3 at all times, if at all possible. And many times we're going to have 3 out of 3 in place. So there may be some parents who still feel uncomfortable, even with the measures that we put in place. And then we would have conversations with them about what we would do to make sure that their child got an education and that they felt comfortable and safe.
All right, so they should contact the district.
Yep.
And have a discussion on it.
Yeah, and then that survey is going to go out to parents in the next day or so.
Thank you.
And Chris had mentioned allergies, and I'm wondering if now that students are going to be eating in their classrooms, there are going to be modifications to our allergy protocols.
Yeah, we're working through the food allergies. Obviously, we know where the students are that have allergies, provided that parents have let us know about that. So this will end up being something that we address probably on a classroom by classroom basis, rather than broad rules that control the lunchroom, which is kind of how things are handled right now. So those will be developed on more of an individual basis.
Susan?
So just 2 quick things. I'm anticipating that there's going to be a lot of parents who are going to have questions about the cleaning chemical that will stay active on the desks and surfaces for multiple days, and how it's going to affect, since the kids are going to be eating at the desk, and I'm sure kids will be dropping food on the desk and eating, they'll touch the chemical and then they'll be consuming it, and how that will, they touch it with their fingers, and then their fingers even have masks on, and what they're really going to the kids' mouth, and how, the safety of that chemical, and, the cross-contamination or any issues that result in that. And then the second question is, we happen to be so lucky to have an entirely active PTA that I know spends the summer usually planning a million fun activities and things for the kids. And obviously this year will have to be different. And I know a lot of the PTAs are meeting and having, discussions to try to figure out what next year looks like. And I was wondering if you have any idea what you envision for next year, like whether virtual programs could be brought in, if they could bring people into the classroom, things that happen out of school that also part of the different things that they could plan to go forth with. Thank you.
So I'll answer them in reverse order. So I love the idea of virtual programs, and I really hope that some great innovations come out of this period. It's a hardship, but this may also cause us to think of things. We are going to try to limit as much as possible visitors. So meetings will be conducted by teleconference whenever possible, meetings with guidance counselors, meetings with the special ed committee, parent-teacher meetings. All of these meetings that we're accustomed to having in person, we're really going to be trying to do virtually as much as possible. And that just reduces the number of people that have to be contacted in the event that somebody turns out 2 days later to be positive, and then you have to start tracing. So, you know, it's not the experience that we know and love here at House. This is going to be a strange new normal, but we're going to, as much as we love those in-person experiences, or somebody who might come to an individual class, that experience, wonderful it is as it is, it's not worth the risk on the other side. So it may be that halfway through the year, we reevaluate things. Circumstances may change, we may go through the fall and have a good experience. There may be some treatments that are becoming available, and we think about this disease a little bit differently. I'm leaving open a lot of room for this to evolve over time, but especially going into September, our initial posture is going to be the most conservative it can be. And I know that'll be disappointing in some cases, but I think it's still the right decision. I'm sorry? Virtual will be fun. Okay? That doesn't scare me at all, and I think it would be actually wonderful. So to the extent that we can do that, it would be all for it, and participate. And then questions on the cleaning chemicals. The State Education Department and the Environmental Protection Agency, the US EPA, have fairly rigorous criteria, and all the things that we use must be approved by them first. So we can put some data sheets, all of these chemicals require data sheets. So we can put those data sheets online so that people can look at it and make their own decision, but they have all been approved for school use. And there are lots of things that are not approved for school use, but these are the antiviral is a hospital grade disinfectant that we've been using since the winter, last winter here.
So if food were to touch the surface and a child would consume it, it should be accessible, it should be healthy for them to do so?
I'm not gonna, I'd rather research that question than give you an off the cuff answer. But what I know is that these are products that are already approved for use in schools, some of which we had already been using. So, tables in lunchrooms had already been cleaned with these things last winter.
Thank you.
Marcella?
Thank you, Dr. Brothers. So I know we're adapting the school schedules at the different schools, and it may actually work to some children's benefit. For example, in the elementary, we would effectively reduce the classes from 22 or 24 children. Maybe if you were virtual, maybe not, but even if you split that class, you'd have a class size of 10 or 11. So while nobody wants this situation, it is going to give them more attention and more focus. And I know we're doing things also like class size in the middle school. My ongoing concern is the high school. And if we have kids going to school 2 days a week, 1 week, 3 days a week, another, what does the education look like on the off days? Because everybody did their best back in the spring, but it was very inconsistent. Some teachers would stream daily, some would just give them homework assignments and check-in 1 day a week. That was a big frustration of parents and students as they're trying to adapt to the new normal that we referred to. It's really important with these kids that they get consistent education every day. Because now we know this is the path we're taking through the year, making sure it's there every day. So I know we could work out every day with the elementary and the middle. And I know there were surveys about split days, and they didn't mean a lot of favor. But did we do different surveys for high school parents to get their reactions, middle school to get theirs, and elementary to get theirs, so it's all aggregated. And is there a way that the high school we could split the day? Maybe the morning is 9th and 10th graders who take classes in school and then finish up remotely at home. And then 11th and 12th grade come in the afternoon, they do sunlight programming. And they do some online in the mornings. That way they're engaged every day, they're learning every day. We're getting over a lot of the social emotional issues that kids have been struggling with. Because I know there are kids who haven't been out since March, and they haven't returned to any sense of normalcy. And beyond the learning, there's only emotional impact. And I just want to make sure that we have a consistent program throughout, so that the children, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, they are getting the education they need to graduate or move up a level. And we're not expecting them to assume the role of, we throw around analogies like college students who may take a class 3 days a week on Monday to Friday. Another group, they may take some classes on Tuesday, Thursday in college. After the same, took 3 on Monday to Friday, 2 on Tuesday, Thursday. But now we're talking about piling up all your classes in 2 days a week and then asking 13, 14, 15 year olds to work independently. So if that's possible, and if it's not, can we get more clarity on what it's going to look like? So if they do have to stay in that room, are they streaming and observing the class? Or is there a separate prepared video recorded lesson for them? Or is it just, okay, you have class on Tuesday, Thursday, but 5 other days a week, just do homework?
Thank you for that. Sorry. So I think you pointed out a couple of the features of the online learning plan that are a little different. Certainly in terms of elementary, there will be much smaller group sizes. We're working through exactly what the instructional model will look like there. We don't want if there's an A cohort and a B cohort in a second grade classroom, we want to make sure that both of those groups of students have equal access to the teacher of record. So that may look different on different days. It may be alternating math with this group, English with that group, or it may be that some kids are working on a project while other kids are working on a lesson with the teacher, and the kids who are working on a project are being coached by a co-pilot. But the goal would be equity between both classrooms and access to the classroom teacher. So I do think that that will be a little bit of a challenge for our teachers, because they'll have to do a lot of planning time with the co-pilot, and so we need to find a way to bake a little bit of time into the day for that planning to go on. But the gap that you have for that investment is that you do have these really small learning pods that allow for a lot of individualized attention. At middle school, again, we are also splitting classes there. It comes at the cost of the electives that we are so proud of, and the middle school program that we have built. I think it's part of the reason why I'm definitely hoping that this is only a 1-year event, and we can go back to the way things were by the time the next school year gets here. At the high school is an incredibly challenging problem for a number of reasons. First of all, there's 2,200 kids. Second of all, there are some places that do like 9th grade academies where the 9th grade students all take the same classes and have roughly the same teachers. Our teachers will have teaching loads that go across grade levels, so there won't be a teacher who only teaches 9th grade. A couple of exceptions, maybe somebody who's teaching biology, because most kids take biology at the same time. But even in those classes, there's some overlap with other grades. For various reasons, students didn't take it earlier, they moved here from another school district. So we see a lot of crossover between the grades. 270 of the 505 freshmen are taking AP classes of some kind. Those classes are also often populated with students from different grade levels. And basically you have so many moving parts. The physical classroom spaces themselves, some of which can only be used for assignments. Then you have the teachers' schedules themselves, the students' schedules, and no two of the 2,200 students have the same schedule. And there are a number of classes, elective classes, that will, even with all of those kids, will only run one period. And so those singletons end up often driving the whole calendar, the whole schedule of the high school, because you have to leave that period free for the student. Therefore, it's the only time they can take photography, let's say. And because of that, they couldn't take English that period. So often those electives end up driving the rest of the program. So to your point about the alternating day and making that an effective model, we did do some drilling down into the data in the survey. So we did ask what level are your students, and then we asked the other questions, and we did do some cross tabulation between answers to one question and answers to the other. So the high school model, the alternating day was, even just among high school parents, the alternating day was preferred to the half-day model. And I don't remember the exact percentages off the top of my head. But no matter what model we have, for the time that students aren't in school, it has to be effective. And so I think your other point is what's happening it's easy to picture what's happening on the days that students are in school, what's happening on the days that students are not in school. And as I said earlier, I think there are going to be times when the lesson lends itself to observing what's going on in the classroom, live streaming that. We have a number of teachers who have been participating since before the pandemic occurred with flipped classrooms. We have a whole flipped classroom pilot project, and the high school has really taken a leadership role with that. So I know there are teachers who are already recording lessons and then using their time in class to really work on practice and group work and coaching with students. So I imagine that, to me, seems like something that will only grow as a result of this model. And teachers will still need to be able to provide some sort of engagement with students on the alternating day to make that alternating day meaningful to them. So that may be office hours, or that may be responding to email. But the key will be to make sure that there's continuity of learning all 5 days, regardless of where the student is physically located. And I won't tell you I have it all figured out yet. We don't have it all figured out yet. We're still working on getting that fleshed out. And I do think that while in the spring we had a one-size-fits-all approach, I do think that we have the time to build something that's a little bit more granular by the different course areas.
Yeah, because just everybody tried their hardest in the spring. This was totally unprecedented. The administration busted their butt. The teachers put in tremendous hours. So, believe it or not, faulting. But, there were situations where, learning from home, there were 2 classes a day. Kids showed up at 10:30 and 11, and they had to do the rest of it. And again, it was because it wasn't a fully structured system, because it wasn't anticipated. It was on the fly. We go back down for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and then it just grew from there. So ensuring that, if Johnny has English 5th period, that every day, 5th period, it's either in-class instruction or, like you said, potentially streaming, whether watching from home or prepared lessons. But, I don't want to see a situation where you're in class 2 days a week and then the other 5 days you're off and you're sort of on your own, because the kids who went through that, they were lost, they were floundering. And we can't expect 13 to 15-year-olds to find their own path. It's one thing when you're in college and you're 18, 20, 22 years old, where you go to a class 3 days a week and then you're independently doing science projects and research. But at that age, you need more structure and support. And you're going to need to be sure. And I know the teachers are bending over backwards, they've been working all summer, putting together lessons. We may have flips, we may have this, we may have that. We just have to make sure that none of these kids are left behind, that we do have consistency. English in all the grades should, be delivering on a consistent basis. Nobody should be, in the the disadvantage if there's disconnects or things are done radically differently between classes. And we can't have kids going through the year and, getting half education because they're only there half the time and they're not learning what they need to learn, carrying themselves forward.
Dr. Rogers, we talked a little bit about that parents are supposed to keep their children home if their temperature is 100 or more. Is the school district going to excuse absences for parents and families that self-report that their children have a temperature of 100 or more, or are we going to still require them to bring in a doctor's note? And if we were to do that, isn't that going to discourage people from keeping their kids at home?
Yeah, one of the things the state guidance says is that we have to work on attendance policies that encourage people to make conservative decisions about health. So we need to go through staff attendance policies and student attendance policies to make sure that we don't create unintended negative consequences where the policy exactly as you said. You create a disincentive for people to stay home when they don't feel well. We're hoping quite the opposite, that parents would be very conservative, knowing that they're protecting their neighbors and perhaps inconveniencing yourself because you have to arrange for childcare, or kid who really just has the sniffles, but better to know that it's the sniffles than to realize it was something worse than that and worry that you brought a child to school that you shouldn't have, and as a result of that, other people were potentially exposed.
And just as a follow-up, for the high school students, if they have to stay home because they're ill, will they be able to participate in any online learning? Assuming that they're one of the students who attend school on the alternate days, if they're home on the day that they're supposed to attend school due to illness, will they be able to do any of their work and get instruction?
That's one of the things that we're fleshing out right now. A couple of things there. If somebody is quarantined, self-quarantined for 14 days, we might approach it differently than someone who is out for a day just to see if a short-term fever resolves because it was no big deal. So we're trying to see if should that be the same thing or should that be two different things? And if the same class is running in the virtual world, the instruction might lend itself better to an all virtual than the alternating. On the other hand, the student probably is not going to want to change teachers. They're familiar with the teacher, the grading policy, when the assignments due. So we're trying to work through that.
In the event that we are all virtual or parents opt to do all virtual model, then is homework modification being considered? I understand that last year where there were Google Meets and online classes, kids couldn't do their classwork at the same time that they were listening to the class virtually. And so what it would result in would be classwork being done after class, but then homework being done for that same class after that, and then additional classes on Google Meet or some other level. The kids wind up getting an enormous amount of work well into it.
So that's kind of the flip side to the worry about students only having a couple of things to do per day and other kids who are having extraordinary workloads. We heard about both extremes. And the advantage of having gone through this spring is that we did learn a lot from it. And we don't want to have either of those two extremes. We don't want to have students that are under challenged and not keeping pace with the curriculum, and we don't want to have students that are feeling overwhelmed. At least one of the places where students started to feel overwhelmed was in the area of electives, things that would normally happen in class. So I'm going to use a bad example, and I'm asking all the art teachers to forgive me in advance, but if a lesson had been planned to actually do some artwork in class, that work that the student is doing gets completed in class time. There's no more work to do once the student leaves. But if the art teacher says, well, since we can't do what we were going to do in class, I'm going to assign some art history and I'm going to ask the student to write about some Renaissance artists. Now that's a homework assignment. It is still art and it's still meaningful and it's still actually a very good lesson. But it's a homework imposition that would not have existed in the brick and mortar environment. And so when a couple of people do that with the best of intentions, now the workload for the student has changed. And so we're working on trying to make sure that we balance that if we are in a virtual environment, because we don't want students to not get art, but we also need to make sure that the provision of those electives doesn't, by nature of moving them to the virtual world, doesn't turn into a salon of work.
Just to echo, I guess, Chris, you, and Tracy, if indeed, specifically for the high schools, they're concerned with the high schools, if we have no choice but go every other day, if we're going back to regular grading, I'd like to just understand exactly what it means, and besides going to ABC, the letter grading, are we going to look into adjusting academic expectations for each class? Are we going to continue to coordinate, or try to coordinate at least, the assessments and the frequency of assessments? For example, tests, quizzes. I mean, are we going to have situations where, kids just completely overwhelmed and now they're given a live instruction every other day and somewhat instruction on the off days, on the alternate days? I mean, this will, in my opinion, add more stress than anything, because last year they had 3 quarters behind them, 3 quarters worth of grades, 3 quarters of the relationship, established relationship with teachers. So, the grading policy, the no harm policy that we implemented makes sense. But now the kids in high school, especially, everything is unknown, especially we're 9th graders, and I really feel for them. I mean, it's stressful on the normal circumstances. Now we have to let, the protocols, the masks, again, during construction, almost guarantee there'll be kids who will be afraid to speak and they can't breathe, and they're gonna pass out, and then whose responsibility is that if that happens? And there's so many questions around that, because obviously the guidance is very clear that we should allow take the mask off during specific rules and instructions in the language. So how are you going to reconcile that with just all the added stress with the normal grading, for the rigor that they have in high school, that translates into that transcript that you can't do over? Are we adjusting our academic expectations for our high school?
So Ms. Bogard and Mr. Cardillo have been working a lot with the high school staff around exactly these kinds of conversations. So she's a little closer to this person. Ms. Bogard, if you don't mind.
I make sure this is on. That's all very, very great questions to ask about the high school. We learned a lot from the spring in the high school. And I agree that we did the best we could at that time. And I agree that there was some inconsistency in what students experienced as we were in the learning curve. So we've taken all of that, we've targeted curriculum work to give that more consistent experience, because we know we need to give students that SciAS at high school experience, right? So when they're with us, I have such full confidence in our teachers that day in school, that 9th grade student is going to bond with that 9th grade teacher, right? Because that's what our teachers do. We watch them do it year after year. They're incredible at it. When that child is at home, streaming from them, they're going to be seeing and experiencing the classroom in a different way than they experienced in the spring. So it will be more consistent. They will have that exposure to regular teaching now. Like we can't change the fact that they're not in that room, but the experience will be different than the spring. And they will see that teacher the next day to follow up. So, spring was hard because students were totally disconnected and nobody knew when it was going to end, So we've done a lot of talking about how we build those relationships, especially with ninth graders as they enter. So, the ninth grade orientation will start that process, but there's specific curriculum work going on toward that advisory. Advisory is continuing in the high school, and advisory is all about building relationships right out of the gate with students. So it's not perfect. We still have some additional work to do on assessments, but we really do have a vision for getting that experience for kids back to a place of more consistency, more rigor, more high school engagement.
Rob?
Dr. Rogers, with respect to physical education, with respect to physical education, are there going to be any changes at the elementary and secondary levels? And is New York State changing their requirements for physical education?
I'm going to turn this one over to Ms. Bavard as well, because she's been working on the scheduling with the elementary school principals and where both recess and physical education are going to fit. And the state is relaxing a number of requirements to give us more flexibility. So, Ms. Bavard.
Right, so the elementary day would be a normal schedule, they're following their normal schedule. They're just doing it spaced differently. So PE will rotate in, the art will rotate in, and by and large, students will experience everything that they experience in our non-pandemic schedule at the elementary. There may be a few exceptions with large grade levels, might have to reconfigure a few of these things so that we have staff to cover everything. But the elective, or what we call a special area schedule at elementary is in that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, but at the high school level, will there be some activities that cannot be played or students can't participate in due to social distancing rules? Or what do you do about, situations where the students are really exercising and wearing masks? And how do we work on that?
Yeah, so the biggest challenges are, PE and music, I think. The big ensembles, the sports, we know sports have been suspended for the time being. And we're actively working on the ensembles because there's rules about social distancing in the guidance. It's 12 feet instead of 6 feet when you're doing certain activities. So we still haven't firmly answered that question. Because the guidance has changed on us a couple of times. So every time we think we have an answer, we get some other new piece of information. So I can't say with certainty what the big ensembles will look like, but there will be music offered. There will be small groups in music. That's been a big challenge. PE, if we can go outside, when we can go outside, we're going to be okay. There are some conversations about creating other spaces for PE so that we could run those offerings more safely as the weather gets colder as well. So we're in the process of those kind of conversations.
Thank you.
Ms. Frankel gave me a quizzical look when you said that sports were suspended. I'll just amend to say suspended until September 21.
Yes. For the time.
September 21 of the year 2020, not September of 2021. They are suspended until the 21st of this September. With a backup plan that they can construct.
Dr. Rogers, I know you sent out surveys to the parents and to the teachers, but have we surveyed the students, especially at the high school? Because maybe some of the students do want to stay remotely. They don't want to come to school. And and can we speak to the architects? So again, everything that I guess I'm saying is aspirational. And it's not fixed at a point in time, and obviously this is dynamic, but can we look to see if there's other options for additional space, within the school, outside of the school, renting space, what else can we do to get all the kids in school that we get at the high school level?
Yeah, someone mentioned surveying the students at last Thursday's workshop. And so we did start a conversation with the high school staff about that. I'm not sure how far along that project is, but they think it was a great idea and they were interested in pursuing it. So I don't know if they're going to do a survey or a thought exchange with them, but there was enthusiasm for that idea. In terms of space, because there are 97 classrooms at the high school, so to get all students back in, we basically need to find 97 more classrooms. So that clearly is outreach. There's no SIOS at high school somewhere just waiting for us to take it over. So that won't present itself as an option. We are looking at, as Bavard alluded to, we're looking at some options for temporary space, things like tents, or other kinds of temporary structures. The State Ed Department has said that they're going to require the same level of diligence that would otherwise be required for any kind of structure. So I don't think that there's going to be a pathway to a very quick erection of some kind of structure that can alleviate a lot of space pressure, because there's going to be so much that has to be done to get it certified by the state. But that said, if we decided that in the second half of the year we really needed more space, in December we were really going to wish back in July we had started this conversation with the state. So we're starting that conversation with the state now, knowing that the sooner we get started, if we decide that this is an option we want to pursue, there is a 6-month lead time on it. Starting now, it makes it a possibility for the second half of the year.
Right, because plus, we don't know how long this is going to go on for. We might not get 97 classes, but maybe we get 30 classes, and then maybe we get 30 more classes. At some point, it's, again, saying a lot of these things are aspirational. We're not going to get 97 classes at one time, and I think we kind of have to start working towards chipping away like everything.
Yeah, and we're absolutely doing that kind of work and researching, what's out there, and trying to think about also how much that would cost and what the approach would be to come to. Thank you.
Just a couple of questions about the safety. One of the slides mentioned that if a region goes over 9%, the governor could put the state standard. What does the 9% represent? That 9% of people being tested in the public are tested positive. And what is our region? Is it Nassau County, Nassau Suffolk, all of downstate? Because when we saw the COVID maps, certain towns may have 50 or 100 cases, and others have 1,000. So, how granular does it get, and how at risk will we if, there's a hot spot 30 miles away? We have nobody in here, but we could potentially be close just because of that.
Great questions. It is the percentage of daily tests that turn out to be positive. So the region is Nassau Suffolk. So obviously it's a large region. Right now, Nassau County is just around 1%. So we're very far away from the 5, really far away from the 9%. And County Health Commissioner said that that 1% represents about 40 positive cases a day for all of Nassau County. So that 1% it's a very low number. Obviously, we prefer it to be 0, but it is a very low number. just on the math of it, even if there was a hotspot somewhere else in the region, it would have to be an extraordinarily high number for it to bring the region's average up to 5% or to 9%. So I don't think that even if Syosset remains free of infection, that a single outbreak somewhere else in the region will cause a decision region-wide. Instead, it will take an outbreak that is very significant. To get to 9%, half the communities would have to be over 9%, if the other half were below. So it would have to be a really significant outbreak to get there. And the other metric that they're using is a rolling average. So even if on one day there was some, for whatever reason, they tested a whole bunch of families that were all living in close proximity to one another, where they all went to the same party or something like that, there was a spike of cases, that one day doesn't count, it gets blended into an average.
And then just regarding the protections within the school, we're discussing the plastic partitions around the desks. Is that something that's permanent to the desk and kids move around the school, or is it something kids hold up and take with them and it's theirs?
I know school districts that are going to leave them in the classroom, and I know of other school districts that are going to have the kids hold them up and bring them with them. I have worries about bringing them in the hallways. I think it's lots of things can go wrong. So I feel much more comfortable with the idea that we would leave them in the classrooms. These are supported by another piece of plastic. They can also be fixed with Velcro, things like that, so that they are stable in the room. And we'd rather try and just keep them clean, but have them remain in the room. Certainly at the elementary level, the students are going to be assigned a desk, and that's going to be their desk and their shield. At the secondary level, we're using these products that have long duration effectiveness, and so the hope is that it will dry on surfaces and will make coat on the surfaces. So I think it'll be safe to leave them in the class, even though there's going to be a change of the people who are in the class between periods.
And just one last thing. I know Rob expressed concern about the mask as did mask breaks and being able to work with the mask on. Just to clarify the slide, 15 minutes is the minimum exposure to somebody where you're considered at risk. And I forget the exact wording, I don't want to get it wrong. But we're not suggesting we can have 15-minute breaks. We may have 3 or 5 minute breaks for half the class and then 3 or 5 minute break for the other half. 15 minutes on the slide didn't mean we're having a 15-minute break, because that's right at the CDC threshold.
Correct. I'd like to be on the safe side of the CDC threshold, and so what you're suggesting to me is a much more conservative place to be. And again, I think I'd rather we as an organization start conservative with what we think is the safest place to be, and then reevaluate that posture over time. We did want to make decisions in March that bound us in June, because we learned a lot between March and June. We were not going to want to make decisions here in July that are going to bind us in December. So this is something where I think the most prudent thing to do would be to be very conservative to start, and then see if we want to adjust the calibration a little bit as time goes on.
And even if somebody at some point isn't wearing a mask, or they pull it down, or they're breathing, taking a break, they still have 2 or 3 protections. They're socially distanced, and they have a screen around them, which is double what the state requires. And by adding the mask, it's 3 times what's required. So even if somebody does have to take it off, they're uncomfortable, they don't breathe, there's still 2 forms of protection, which is twice what's required anyway.
Right. We're trying to build as many redundancies into the safety system as we possibly can.
But people shouldn't be. I don't want families concerned that when someone's in class, they take off the mask for a few minutes to breathe. My child may get sick. There's layers of protection, and that's just one layer.
Right. And we know that students are going to be eating lunch at their desk, and so obviously the mask has to be off. And so for that period, that's social distancing, and the plastic shields are going to be the protection that makes that a safe thing to do.
Is the lunch in class, I'm sorry, go off topic. Is it that they're having a lunch period in the classroom, or just during the 5th period you're going to eat for lunch, or whatever the 5th period is?
So I'll ask Ms. This has been also something that we've worked on a lot. So I'll ask Ms. Bovar to do.
Yeah, at the high school, there are 5 identified spaces where students will have lunch. So it's a little bit different at the high school. They will be socially distant. Not every class, it won't be the methodology of doing middle and elementary where they're eating in class. There's 5 identified spaces around the school. If a student does have lunch in their period, they'll go to one of those spaces. They're scheduled.
Then middle school,
The middle school, we're going to have lunch in classrooms.
during the class session.
Yeah, so because the
Designated
routine
lunch
is a little
period.
bit different, yeah, so during the lunch period, they'll stay in that class, we're limiting movement in the middle school a little bit more. And so they will be socially distant in those instructional spaces and eat at class.
I'm sorry, but I mean, within the middle school, is it the designated lunch period in the classroom, or is it just the time to eat, but you may be in bed?
No, there's designated, there's lunch in the schedule, yes. Fair questions for parents.
Right.
Me too.
So, with respect to the lunches, Dr. Rogers, are we going to, impose any additional restrictions on food delivery, to the schools? I know this is an issue that's come up in the past. But if we're trying to, minimize the amount of people, amount of visitors and people coming, are we going to, ask people not to send special lunches or have delivery services bring food to the schools?
Well, delivery services, DoorDash, Uber Eats, they're already open. So, is it possible that our clever students have found ways around that? It may be, but it's not something that we permit. And if we were to learn of something that would be a violation of the code of conduct. So, we are trying to restrict visitors of every kind. And this would, constitute another visitor. So that's something that we would, we don't permit it already. We're going to be extra vigilant about enforcing that kind of law.
I'm just a follow-up from the two early, to my question last time, regarding the college board, the timeline in, working out their curriculum for the year, and do we have any data yet on the performance, on the exams from our students? So still,
So we do have some data on the AP performance for SIASA students that they did phenomenally well. Chris Rafini was sharing that with me, so we can give a report on that. We can give somebody that if you're interested. I can ask him too what the most recent update from College Board is about September, because I don't have a total grasp of that detail. I know that all last spring, the College Board was meeting with us, they were modifying things, they modified their exams, and we were very happy with our results this last.
Is there any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you to our board members for preparing and asking questions on the fly as well. And just feel helpful to each other, to the administrators and the staff, and also to our families out there. So thank you so much for today. Thank you for staying late with us, Dr. Rogers and Belle, for answering all of our questions. Sure, but also for participants.